What if the United States banned all guns? Welcome back to Hypotheticals again, everyone. As you can tell by the intro question, today we're talking about gun control. I'm going to preface this video right now by stating that this may be a bit more opinionated than what I've done before. I am going to outright state my opinion on this topic as we get into it, and you're totally free to disagree. That's what the comments are for. It won't all be opinion based though. We're also going to take a deep dive into some statistics and multiple hypothetical scenarios, because that's what this channel is all about. Also, just a quick warning, I'm going to be talking about quite a bit of gun violence in depth in this video. If that's not for you, feel free to click away. Otherwise, that'll be the last time I bring that up. Let's now get into a few numbers. There were 656 mass shootings in the United States in 2023. For those of you who don't know, the exact way to define a mass shooting is a bit murky. Different databases have different definitions. For this video, I will be using the definition established by the Gun Violence Archive, which means the incident must, quote, have a minimum of 4 victims shot, either injured or killed, not including any shooter who may have also been killed or injured in the incident. With that in mind, in addition to the 656 mass shootings in 2023, there were 42,987 gun violence deaths, as well as 36,366 injuries. Clearly, the United States has a huge problem, and no one really seems to be trying to solve it. So what if the United States banned all guns? What would a possible ban look like? Would it do anything to solve the massive problem at hand? Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's say we all wake up one day and the US government has announced that it will be repealing the Second Amendment, meaning that US citizens will no longer have the right to bear arms. Now, ignoring the civil uprising that would probably stem from this decision, how practical would that really be? The answer is, in my opinion, not really practical at all, and let me explain why I think that. According to the Trace, as of 2020, there were an estimated 433.9 million guns in civilian possession in the United States. That's around 100 million more guns than people, which is just absurd to think about. From my perspective, I don't see a valid reason for there to be that many guns in circulation. It just doesn't make sense to me. And before all the 2A truthers come at me, again, I'm not saying a national gun ban is what should happen. I'm just trying to visualize what that might look like. If the US government were to somehow repeal the Second Amendment, it would be extremely difficult to get all of these weapons back. In fact, it would probably be downright impossible. Even if our government was able to coordinate massive gun buyback programs where the government would give people money in exchange for their used weapons, ammunition, and other things like that, the vast majority of gun owners in this country probably just wouldn't bother showing up to turn in their weapons. Remember, there are more guns than people in the United States. Let's talk about gun buyback programs for a second too. These are extremely popular, but studies show that they just aren't that effective. According to the Trace, the most rigorous studies of gun buyback programs found little evidence to suggest that they reduce shootings by any significant degree in either the short or long term. So like, they don't do that much, at least according to the evidence we have now. Some people will say that getting one more gun off the streets is good enough for them, but if they don't stop shootings, then what's the point? You're not going to get every single gun back. So anyways, back to our scenario, what are you going to do? Arrest or fine people that don't show up? That doesn't seem very practical, and that's also how you literally get people rebelling against the government, which doesn't seem optimal. And to be very clear here again, I'm not pro-gun. I'm quite anti-gun, but the idea of banning all weapons just doesn't seem very feasible given the position that the US is in right now. But of course, the idea of banning all guns is a bit of a fringe argument, especially amongst politicians. So what is Washington trying to do about this whole issue? Given the number of mass shootings in 2023, remember 656, surely the federal government is trying to do something to solve the gun problem, right? Oh, okay then. I guess we should talk about the assault weapons ban. An assault weapons ban has long been what many Democrats have thrown out as an answer, or at least part of an answer, to solving the mass shooting epidemic in the United States. Before we get into why, let's discuss a little history. In 1994, the first and only federal assault weapons ban was put into place by the US government during the Clinton presidency. The law, known officially as the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act, prohibited the manufacture or sale for civilian use of certain semi-automatic weapons. It also banned magazines that could accommodate 10 rounds or more. However, 10 years later, that same ban was allowed to expire. The incidence rate of mass shootings has increased dramatically since that point. According to the Ohio Capital Journal, the risk of a person in the US dying in a mass shooting was 70% lower during the period in which the assault weapons ban was active. Why is it still not in effect today? The answer to that question is due in part to a very different political landscape. But I don't know, man. To me, I look at the dip in mass shootings that occurred during the assault weapons ban as pretty solid evidence that something like that would work today, at least if it were paired with other laws. And yet, time and time again, a push to reinstate the ban has failed. After it initially expired in 2004, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who was the chief sponsor of the bill when it first passed in 1994, tried to renew it. At that point, in a post-9/11 and at-war America, the bill failed to pass by 12 votes. Former President Barack Obama claimed renewing the ban was part of his agenda when he was elected in 2008, but his efforts ultimately weren't enough, even after the 2012 Sandy Hook mass shooting. The fact of the matter is that the assault weapons ban, no matter how supportive evidence is in favor of it, has not been renewed because politicians in Washington are locked in a stalemate. 10 states have passed assault weapons bans, but on a national level, we're pretty far from making any progress. On top of that, these gun bans won't have any super significant impact on a state-by-state basis because guns can just be carried over state lines or illegally sold to another buyer. Take Chicago, for example. Contrary to popular belief, not all guns are illegal in Chicago. That being said, many still are, but that hasn't stopped the city from seeing loads of gun violence. As of November 2023, the city had seen 32 mass shootings, most of which resulted from gang violence. So the gun ban isn't working there, right? Well, it's not really clear. Yes, many guns are banned and there are still a lot of mass shootings, but the guns being used aren't coming from the city. They're being funneled across other borders. As of 2017, about 6 out of the 10 guns that were being used in crimes in Chicago came from gun shops outside the state of Illinois. It's pretty simple. Because state borders are open and you're free to drive wherever you want, guns can funnel freely into areas that have gun restrictions as well. Someone could purchase a gun in Texas and then drive to Minnesota to use it. It wouldn't be convenient, but it's certainly possible, and that's why an assault weapons ban wouldn't work unless it was put in place on the federal level. A pretty common argument I've seen from conservatives and other pro-gun people is that assault weapons isn't a real term and that assault weapons doesn't have an actual definition. The fact of the matter, though, is that there quite literally is a definition for assault weapons. It's in the 1994 ban. Here's the list of items that were banned in 1994 if you want a better look at it. The list would probably need to be updated a bit if it were re-implemented today, but the old list is still a helpful reference. Now, this ban did keep handguns legal, and that's particularly noteworthy because handguns have been the most common gun used in mass shootings since 1982. To me, this means that an assault weapons ban wouldn't be enough, though it would be a good starting point to reduce the number of mass shootings that occur yearly. But again, how do you get people to turn in weapons that would be banned under a new assault weapons ban? It's tough to say, and honestly, I'm not sure if there's a good answer. I just think that from a purely analytical standpoint, a new assault weapons ban would help solve part of the problem. Before even doing that, though, the United States' pro-gun mindset would need to be altered. According to a 2017 survey, 42% of Americans thought that new gun laws would do absolutely nothing to stop mass shootings. Granted, that was about 7 years ago now, so things might have changed a little, but still. On top of that, in an early January 2023 survey, 45% of all registered voters surveyed said that it was more important to protect the right to own guns than to limit gun ownership. Meanwhile, 48% of registered voters who responded said it was more important to limit gun ownership. Basically, the survey told us, and yes, it's only one survey, that Americans are practically split right down the middle when it comes to whether gun rights should be prioritized or limited. With the mostly liberal anti-gun group blaming the guns, the mostly conservative pro-gun group has taken a different approach, blaming the people behind the guns. Before we get into this section, I want to make it clear that I'm not here to demonize those who suffer from a mental illness. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of those who struggle with some form of mental illness are totally harmless. Yet whenever we hear about mass shootings in the news, it's pretty common for it to also be reported that the shooter suffered from some form of mental illness, was bullied, or something else along those lines. But in most scenarios, mental illness doesn't actually play a huge role. According to the Columbia University Mass Murder Database, the largest catalog of mass shootings and mass murder in the world, the vast majority of mass shootings and mass murder are committed by people without mental illness. Columbia University also writes that, quote, the public tends to link serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia or psychotic disorders with violence and mass shootings. But serious mental illness, specifically psychosis, is not a key factor in most mass shootings or other types of mass murder. According to their research, a mere 5% of mass shootings are associated with severe mental illness. And while around 25% are associated with non-psychotic, psychiatric, or neurological illnesses like depression or anxiety, those conditions were incidental in most cases. The bottom line here is that the research suggests that extreme mental health issues don't tend to be associated with mass shootings, despite what many conservatives and pro-gun people may say. But to be clear, of course I believe we need to keep guns out of the hands of those who pose a risk to themselves and others, which we'll talk about more in a bit. I just think there's more to it than just that. Another rebuttal to gun control that I've heard a lot is if only there was a good guy with a gun. Is that an effective argument though? Off the top of my head, head, I can think of multiple mass shootings where good guys with guns were present and did nothing to stop the event from occurring. When 17 students were killed at Parkland High School in Florida in 2018, the school's armed on-duty police officer failed to enter the school building where shots were being fired. You want another example? How about the 2022 Uvalde school shooting where numerous police officers waited 70 minutes to breach the classroom where the shooter was waiting? They had the guns necessary to prevent more damage from being done, but they just sat there and waited. That whole police department is now under investigation by the Department of Justice for their missteps, by the way. Now, granted, I understand the good guy with a gun argument applies more so to law-abiding citizens who have the right to carry. And to be fair, good guys with guns have stopped shootings before. But according to the FBI, the percentage of mass shootings stopped by good guys with guns is around 4.4%. Even other researchers who say the FBI undercounts those incidents have claimed the percentage is more like 34.4%. While that's a huge difference, it still means the majority of mass shootings are not stopped by good guys with guns. I just don't think that's a good enough number for it to be the solution we're looking for. And if you want to make the argument that we need to have even more guns in America, I question what that number needs to get up to for this country to be safer. Because remember, it's already at 433.9 million, and it's only going up. So what is the solution here? Again, I'm not quite sure, and I certainly don't have all the answers. I do know though that spending time debunking certain arguments while not putting forward what I think could work isn't very effective. So I'm now going to get into what I think could work best for this country, and something that the majority of Americans could agree with. First things first here, we're not taking away everyone's guns. Like I said earlier, that would be basically impossible given the absurd amount of firearms that are currently in circulation. Even if that number were significantly lower, it would be extremely difficult to persuade law-abiding gun owners to turn in their weapons voluntarily. So what's the first move here? It starts with preventing more guns from circulating, specifically into the hands of those who may be a danger to themselves or others. This is where extreme risk laws, more commonly known as red flag laws, come into play. When a person is in crisis or is considering committing harm to themselves or others, it is those closest to them who often see the first signs. Red flag laws allow loved ones or law enforcement to intervene by petitioning a court for an order to temporarily prevent someone in crisis from accessing guns. They also prevent the person from buying new guns. This to me seems like common sense. Pro-gun people often blame the people who have the guns when mass shootings occur, and these laws would prevent guns from falling into the wrong hands. And yet, only 21 states, including Washington, D.C., have implemented some sort of red flag law. The laws are also barely used in the places where they're implemented. Why is that? It's largely because of extreme pushback from opponents of red flag laws, some of whom claim that these kinds of laws violate due process rights. Others claim that law enforcement barging into the home of somebody who's already in crisis has the potential to be dangerous, which is true, but that just means a different approach has to be taken. And before anyone says it, it's not really a matter of opinion as to whether these laws would stop certain mass shootings. It's more so a matter of fact. Take the 2022 Highland Park, Illinois mass shooting, for example, where the shooter drew police attention in 2018 for threatening to, quote, kill everyone in his house. Police also knew that he had a history of attempting to take his own life, yet Highland Park police never requested a gun surrender order from him. Had police done that, the shooter would have had his weapons taken from him, and he would have been prevented from purchasing new weapons. Instead, 7 people were killed and 48 others were wounded in the shooting. Obviously, these red flag laws wouldn't stop everything, but they would 100% help. It's very hard to suggest otherwise. What else can be done though? Is there a solution to this massive problem that makes everyone happy while stopping mass shootings entirely? Unfortunately, probably not. To be clear here, when I say entirely in that question, I mean stopping any and all mass shootings from occurring. Given the amount of guns in the US and how unlikely it would be that people would be willing to give up said guns, it is impossible to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. We just need to do our absolute best to prevent that from happening as much as possible. How do we get that done? Federal red flag laws would be a start, in my opinion. I think that reinstating the federal assault weapons ban would be beneficial as well. But I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Gun violence is a uniquely American problem. The numbers speak for themselves on that. Until there's a large shift in the culture surrounding guns in the United States and better laws are put in place to prevent harm to others from occurring, I don't see too many of today's problems being solved. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic, I hope I am, but that just seems to me how things are going. Topics like this require a lot of research and attention. It's something I personally have given a lot of thought to. If you want to check out my sources for this video, all of those links are in the description below. If I missed anything or left anything out, that was not not on purpose. There's so much info out there on this topic that I probably did. If that's the case, I apologize. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this was a bit different than what I've previously uploaded, given that I made it a bit more opinionated than my older videos. Obviously, I'm open to hearing your thoughts and opinions in the comments. I would love to be able to have a conversation with you all about this. I know I'll probably attract some trolls with this and people who won't take the problem too seriously and won't want to have a discussion, but that's just the reality of the internet. It is what it is. Alright, that's all I've got for this hypothetical. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like and subscribe, and remember to check out my sources in the description for more info if you're interested. Hope I see you next time.